Now we're going to work on multiplication of fractions. Okay, so we're going to start out with 1/3 times 4/5. And with multiplication, it's really simple. If you just have simple fractions, then you can just multiply your numerator straight across the board, and you can multiply your denominator straight across the board. So this problem would end up being 4/5. That's your answer. Simple as that. Let's try one like this, where you have 6 times 2/3. Whenever you have a whole number that you're multiplying by a fraction, just make that whole number into a fraction. The denominator will always be 1. So just give that whole number a denominator of 1, and then again multiply across the board. So 6 times 2 is 12, 1 times 3. I can look at this fraction and identify that I can reduce it. I know 3 will go into 12 4 times, so that reduces down. Technically, it reduces down to 4/1, but you would never leave a problem like that. So your answer is simply, okay? Now let's do another one that's kind of just like that one. We have 3/8, and we're going to multiply it by 4. Let's turn that 4 into a fraction by giving it a denominator of 1, and then we'll multiply across the board. 3 times 4, 12. 8 times 1 is 8. Here I'm left with an improper fraction. We don't leave things with improper fractions, so let's flip that and turn it into a mixed number. So let's take 8, 12. I end up with 8. I can look at this and know that I have to reduce it or I will get it wrong. So that reduces down to. So far, multiplication of fractions has been really simple. If it's, if there's no whole numbers involved, you just take those 2 fractions and you multiply your numerators across the board, you multiply your denominators across the board, making sure that you don't end with an improper fraction, and making sure that you reduce all the way. What gets a little bit complicated is when you start throwing whole numbers into the mix. So with this one here, we have 2 1/3 times 3 3/4. It's not too difficult. You just have to do a little bit of an extra problem or a little bit of an extra step. And the very first thing you have to do is get rid of those whole numbers, which is a little bit different. With subtraction and addition of fractions, we just kind of forgot about those whole numbers and brought them down at the end. When you're multiplying fractions, you get rid of the whole numbers in the very beginning. And basically how you do that is you multiply your denominator by the whole number and then add your numerator. So with this one, I'm going to multiply my denominator, 3, by my whole number, 2, which is going to give. And I'm going to take that 6 and add my numerator to it. So 6, 7. So my new fraction ends up being 7/3. Over here, I need to do the same thing. So I'm going to take my denominator, I'm going to multiply it by my whole number, 12. I'm going to take that 12 and add it to my numerator, or add my numerator to it. So your new problem ends up being 7/3 times 4. Now I'm just going to multiply straight across, and I've already done it here, so I know that it's 105/12. So that's my answer. However, we know that's an improper fraction. So I'm going to take that improper fraction and I'm going to turn it into a mixed number. In order to do that, you take your denominator. 12 will go into 105 8 times. My math, I end up with 9. So here I end up with I can look at that right there, and again, I know that I have to reduce that to its lowest form. So I know that 3 will go into 9 and 12. So let's reduce this. And I'm going to keep my whole number of 8, and I know that 3 will go into 9 3 times, and I know that 3 will go into 12 4 times. The problem of 8 3/4. Okay? So let's talk about this one again. It was my original problem, and I had to get rid of those numerator or those whole numbers first thing. And in order to do that, I simply took my denominator and I multiplied it by that whole number 3 times 6, and then I added my numerator. So kind of wrap that little equation around your head. Take your denominator, multiply it by the whole number, add your numerator. That will give you your new numerator, and just like always. So when we did all of that, we ended up with 7/3 times 15/4. And when we multiplied our numerators and our denominators straight across the board, we ended up with 5/12. That was an improper fraction that we had to turn into a mixed number. So like always, we take our 12, or we take our denominator, and we divided it into our numerator, which left us with 8 and 9/12. That fraction then needed to be reduced to its lowest term, because I know in 3 will divide into both of those numbers. And so by doing that, we ended with 8. Final answer. And again, I can't stress enough, you have to reduce to its lowest form in order to get these questions correct. Let's do one more that's kind of, has those little steps that we just worked out. We'll take 2 and 4 ninths, and we're going to multiply it by 1 and 3/11. Again, very first thing here with multiplication, you want to get rid of those whole numbers. So I'm going to take my denominator, multiply it by my whole number. 9 times 2 is 18. And I'm going to add my numerator to that number. So 18 plus. Over here, I'm going to do the same thing. Multiply it by my whole number, gives me 11. I'm going to take that 11 and add it to my numerator. So we now have our new numerators. Fractions turn into 20 times 11. So now I'm going to multiply my numerators and my denominators straight across the board. And when I do that, I get 300. So that's an improper fraction. We can't leave it as an improper fraction, so we're just going to do the work that we know how to do. We're going to take the denominator, we're going to divide here. 99 will go to 308. So my new fraction, or my mixed number, ends up being 11/90. Again, looking at that, I can tell that that number needs to be reduced to a lower term. I know that 11 will go into 99 9 times. So I'm going to reduce that fraction, and I'm going to end up with 3 and 1 ninths. Okay? So that is how you're going to multiply fractions. With this one, the first thing you have to do, if there's a whole number, again, if there's no whole number, you just multiply your numerators and your denominators straight across the board. If there's a whole number involved, then you have to immediately get rid of that whole number by taking your denominator, multiplying it by the whole number, and then adding your numerator. Then that sets you up with your new fraction, and then you can multiply across the board, making sure that you don't end with an improper fraction and making sure that you reduce to lowest terms.